Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Welcome to Tech Thursdays with XenTegra. My name is Raj Dalari. I'm the sales director for XenTegra Canada, and I want to welcome you to this tech webinar. This is part of a series that we run to talk about new and exciting technologies that we're working with. I am very pleased today to have the opportunity to have Bill Walker from Tanium join us. Bill Walker is a worldwide manager of partner services for Tanium, and he's going to be taking us through presentation and demo of the Tanium product. But before we get started, I just want to say a few words about it. It is, first off, it's our distinct pleasure to have Tanium here. We have seen some swift adoption of the Tanium toolset, really because it offers what we consider differentiated value to the marketplace. Tanium has really thought through the complexity that people run into with IT operations and security and has created a single platform that brings together both. So in its own right, the IT operations portion is very strong. There's a very strong capability to do patching, to do asset management, but then on top of it, Tanium really has a strength in security and threat monitoring. I'm certainly no expert. Bill Walker is the expert, so he's going to take you through it. And so before I turn it over to him, what I want to point out is this is going to be an interactive session. And what I mean by interactive is if you've got a question, please ask it, and we're going to do our best to answer it. I also want to point out that today is an overview. It's not really a deep dive into all the functionality of Tanium. There's really a lot to Tanium. So what Bill's going to be taking us through is an overview. So you get a general understanding of the capabilities of the product. But if you've got a specific question, by all means ask, and we will handle it. So with that in mind, Bill, first off, welcome. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us, July 7th. I mean, it's beautiful. You could be outside. Now, why would you want to be outside? You could be presenting. It's great. It's terrific to have you here, and over to you.
Hey, Raj, thanks so much. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you guys for the opportunity to speak to everybody today about Tanium. As Raj said, I'm Bill Walker. I'm located in Charlotte, North Carolina, which Raj might explain why I'm not outdoors right now. 90 some odd degrees heat with about 1,000% humidity. So I'm very happy to be inside today talking to you guys about Tanium. So let me go ahead and get my presentation up here. And yes, so as Raj said, Bill Walker, Director of Partner Services with Tanium. And let me just start and talk to you guys about how I kind of want to go through this webinar today. We're going to start off with a real brief introduction of who the heck am I, and then we're going to want to get into the overall challenge or the problem space that Tanium is here to address. And then I want to talk about the Tanium solution a little bit with this visibility and control theme that you're going to hear a lot about today. And then we're going to go into a demo. I'm happy to kick around and go into any different area of the product. But again, I want to demo a couple of the sort of core and key functions of the platform itself. Talk about next steps, and as Raj mentioned, Q&A at any time throughout the presentation today. Very happy to stop, pause, take questions, and go in a different direction if we need to. So again, thank you all for attending, and thank you for the time today. So yeah, Bill Walker, I'm, let's see, I'm 3 years at Tanium most recently here. I've done a lot of different roles, as you can see on the slide, everything from customer success through solutions engineering, and now really dedicated to growing our partner business here at Tanium. But way back in the dark ages, I did start off at Ernst & Young as IT operations and support person. Absolutely fantastic career opportunity, learned a ton there. Spent 21 years at Microsoft, yes, that's 21, in a variety of different roles in different places across the company. Another great experience there, and really learned a lot about the IT operations side of the business. But then moving over to Tanium has been an absolutely wonderful experience here. The very first time I saw the demo, I was immediately kind of blown away at the speed and the capability of the platform. So with any luck here today, as we go through this, I will share some of that enthusiasm for what the Tanium platform is able to do. But before we get into all of that, I do kind of want to zoom out a little bit and just talk at a broad level about the challenge that I'm facing, that you're facing, that everybody we know is currently facing. And I want to really zoom that out because before we jump into individual technological problems and challenges, let's just broaden it out and talk about technology and society today and these three trends that are definitely hitting and impacting almost every aspect of our lives right now. Whether we're thinking about digital transformation, the creation and consumption of massive amounts of data, and all of the shifts of everything having to do with how digital is transforming our work lives, our home lives, our personal lives. So that's a huge vector in terms of the overall problem space today. If we think about hybrid work, right? Work is no longer necessarily a place that we get up, take a shower, and drive into anymore. Work can be right here where I am in my home. It could be down at the Starbucks, or it could be anywhere, right? So that hybrid work and that sort of inflection point of changing from everybody coming into one place where we can sort of gather around a perimeter of a firewall and do our best to protect you, now into this hybrid space where everybody and everything is happening everywhere and all the time. Endpoint explosion. I'd like to ask this question, and this may not be the most interactive forum to ask it, but does anybody here know to the number exactly how many Wi-Fi devices exist on your network at home right now at this instant? I think that's a really challenging question for most people to ask, even when you're talking about the home, because now we're talking about Nest thermostats, refrigerators, potentially, iPads, iPhones, Xboxes, take your pick, right? It is exploding across all of our networks. And that is a microcosm of what we see when we look at the larger corporate American landscape today, or corporate global landscape today, is that the number of endpoints is absolutely exploding. And as we add IoT devices into this mix, it's only going to continue to proliferate. So what challenges does that specifically bring in the IT landscape is, let's start with just modernizing legacy platforms and environments. I think, as we all went through the pandemic, everybody realized this need to sort of shift and change the way that we approach the general infrastructure that's needed for IT operations and security today. Ongoing compliance and regulatory demands, whether we're talking CCPA or GDPR or NIST or any of the standards that are out there, managing and maintaining a compliant environment is no small feat, right? It does take a lot of elbow grease, a lot of work. So that's another one of the significant challenges. And then also just managing the growing, threat attack vectors, attack surfaces that are out there. We've seen a ton of that, right? From the launch of the Ukrainian war and the sort of the explosion of threats that have come from that vector, or whether we're just talking about in general with the pandemic and more people being at home, there's a massively growing attack surface all the way around anything having to do with IT. Now, last year, globally, $160 billion was spent in the area of cybersecurity. And I think this fundamental question is worth asking and is worth sort of stopping to think about. Why is it that things are getting worse, despite the fact that we're spending more and more money on different point solutions to help take care of individual parts of the problem? But again, 160 billion, and I think we can all agree things are getting worse. The biggest reason for this, if you kind of net it out from our perspective, is that we are all, or that I should say that writ large across the IT environment globally, many organizations are relying on isolated point solutions, a whack-a-mole approach that we're going to get the best in breed. Maybe that's a Qualys compliance solution. And sure, it does a great job doing general compliance information, but it's going to bring you back a data set of compliance information that is stuck in that Qualys world, right? And maybe in some of these cases of some of these platforms or products, we can export that and then we have to import it and tie it into a different data set. But in general, isolated point solutions are really beginning to fail us as an industry and as a global industry, I guess.
Right. And Bill, it's Raj. I'm thinking this is really just a subset of all the tools that are out there. I mean, you could probably expand this list by about tenfold, to reflect reality, but this is a good way to kind of condense it into a single slide set.
Yeah, there's no question this is a very small subset of all the vendor solutions that are out there, of all the isolated point solutions that live and exist out there today. So it's a great point. We picked some of the big names here that we see and that we're in conversations with our customers about from regularly, and wanted to just show this as a sort of an illustration of that proliferation of these point solutions. And if you back this up and you think about all these different point solutions that exist out there, every one of these point solutions has an agent, has some sort of a CPU impact, has some sort of a memory impact. And when we multiply that times the entire estate that's out there, that impact can be quite real and quite significant. So, again, this is kind of part of that problem, though, is that isolated point solution landscape that we live in breaches still happen. In fact, they happen every 11 seconds. And in fact, earlier this week, I was speaking to one of our account managers down in Brazil. And in Brazil, they point to every 3 seconds there's a breach, right? Now, we can split hairs on the numbers that are happening there, but I think nobody would dispute the fact that these, that breaches and incidents are happening at an alarming rate and that it is escalating. This one really blows my mind, and this is true of every prospect that we talk to today, is that they are missing somewhere between 15 and 20% of endpoints. And in fact, the number here is showing us 94% of all enterprises are missing up to 20% of their endpoints. Now, it doesn't mean that they physically can't find them. It means that their systems of record are not reporting their existence, right? And obviously that gets us to the sort of the classic dilemma of you can't protect what you can't see, what you don't know is out there, right? But that's, again, a huge part of the overall industry problem is this lack of visibility, this lack of active discovery that is constantly monitoring for new endpoints that appear in the environment, or just making sure that we have a track of where are all of the different endpoints in our environment.
Bill, sorry, just going back to that slide, that's a frightening statistic.
It is horrifying, yeah.
I mean, it really, if you say that, most organizations can't really see 10, like a solid fifth of their total endpoints. I mean, yeah, wow. That really gives you pause for thought.
It really does, Raj. I think it's a great point that, and the 94% to me is almost misleading. I literally have not worked with a customer yet at Tanium, either a prospect or a customer. Actually, let me make sure I'm very careful saying this. I haven't worked with a prospect yet who is seeing 100% of their assets, right? It has not happened at all. And again, the 15 to 20% seems like rule of thumb now after multiple years and multiple customers, as we get in and start to engage. Almost everybody out there is 15 to 20% down on what they actually have. And yeah, to your point, 1/5 of your stuff out there, if you don't even know it's there, how do you know what kind of data is on it? How do you know what kind of vulnerabilities exist on that endpoint? How do you know what level of risk that endpoint is introducing to your organization if you can't even see it, right? So this is the table stakes portion of either IT operations or IT security, right? Is being able to understand what's out there, what do I need to manage? That's step one, is just that process alone. And this is where we find almost every one of our prospects enters the door in this space and really needs help on that discovery and asset inventory kind of a process. The end result of all of this, though, is that what we see is an IT operations versus security kind of warfare that goes on in almost every organization out there today. Perhaps the security team owns the compliance data, and then they have a rough and rocky road on how do we get that compliance data over to the operations team who owns patching to remediate all of those individual pieces, right? So today, what the environment that most corporations, most organizations exist in is this IT operations versus security, right? No single source of truth. As I mentioned, from the multiple point solutions, we might have a lot of different data sets coming in, but there's no single aggregation point. Sure, we can ship it to Splunk and we can kind of see it, but can we make it an active, sort of a checklist of things that we need to go accomplish and do and remediate all within a single pane of glass, right? So that's kind of where we are today in terms of what does the challenge look like for us as an industry writ large, right? And now I want to go a little bit into sort of the answer as Tanium sees it, which is really around providing visibility into every one of those assets, as well as control, for remediation of any of those problems that we've discovered. So briefly, who is Tanium? We are a leader in converged endpoint management, a huge Fortune 100 presence, and tons and tons of customers across the entire globe here. 5 branches of the U.S. Armed Forces, multiple SLED, PubSec kind of customers, and the number I really like here is this 30 million plus endpoints managed globally. So that number just continues to grow, and customers are finding that once they get their endpoint and their estate sort of in with Tanium, they have a much better sense of kind of where they are. Also very proud to note over on the left-hand side, just the Fortune 100 best companies to work for, and the #1 medium organization in the UK. So just a little bit of accolades there for Tanium and a brief bit of who we are. And again, back into it, this is what it is that we provide: visibility and that capability for remediation, right? And you know, that's an important distinction, because I think that's another unique aspect of the Tanium platform, is not only are we going to help you understand all of the different interfaces that exist within your organization, and not only are we going to help you understand what needs to be patched, what kinds of vulnerabilities exist, what kinds of sensitive data is out there, but then we can in that same console flip over to the remediation side of things and go ahead and address that problem writ large and at Tanium speed. So that's what we're going to discuss here a little bit. 1 second, let me move this element here. But yeah, I think this is a well-written sort of summary of what the overall platform is about. It's an integrated cloud-based platform that locates all your data, patches every device in seconds, implements critical security controls, and provides ongoing vigilance and compliance all in real time from a single pane of glass. You know, when I read that, it makes me, makes me want to scream, okay, where do I sign up? Where do I get on that, right? And again, our goal, we just talked about IT operations versus security. The way that Tanium sees the world is that we want to bring IT operations and security together, right? And that we believe that's a much stronger place for any organization to exist, is when there is a good relationship between IT operations and security. And how do we get there? Well, we get there through this single pane of glass, a single control plane, a single source of truth. Again, when we get multiple teams, and let me just back it up and kind of go through maybe a hypothetical scenario here of when a breach occurs. So let's go back and we'll talk a little bit around Log4j when that happened sort of mid-December of 2021. Multiple problems were occurring, right? This was the vulnerability that was introduced in a Java logging utility that is incredibly widespread, but also very much buried, right? It's not something that you see as an installed application. It's sort of registered inside of a sort of a hook of code, right? And so in order to find it, you have to be able to go through some other archive type files to understand exactly where does that exist. So Tanium has a great capability to do that, but imagine IT operations and security teams that didn't have Tanium at that point. They were faced with an incredibly challenging task. They had to go out and understand, where did this series of binaries exist? Again, not an installed application, not necessarily registered in the registry, right? It's something that is hooked into individual programs, buried a couple of layers deep. So where are they going to get that information? And maybe they have some stuff that can detect certain types of running applications, but then they have to cross that off with their actual inventory list from their CMDB. It gets really messy really, really quickly, right? When those systems, those sort of systems of record for your CMDB and for perhaps any of your other sort of analysis packages that are out there, to be able to bring all of that together into one place where you can immediately flip into the remediation side of things is missing from most organizations, certainly 100% of them that don't have Tanium. So this is where we see the benefit here, is that IT operations and security can come together with one single pane of glass, one shared sense of the truth. What is the real number of machines that have that? What is the number of machines that have installed applications that we know are vulnerable? All of those pieces is something that Tanium can provide and bring to the table here. And that's really what we feel is required in the industry in order to take that better step towards, we mentioned 160 billion spent on cybersecurity, and despite that, breaches every 11 seconds. What's required to fix that? It's a convergence, right? It is bridging this gap between IT operations and security, making it so that it's not two completely separate silos, but it really is one unified, converged entity that's really looking over the health of the entire organization. And so, yeah, that's why this year Tanium has introduced a new category to the market, Converged Endpoint Management. And again, we feel that this is the right way forward. We feel that endpoints are sort of the new frontier here as we continue to expand into IoT, OT, as we continue to expand into cloud, into containers, into virtual machines, into laptops, tablets, phones, all of it. We really want to converge all of those endpoint presences into a single control plane, a single pane of glass, so that you can get the visibility you need across all of those, plus that ability to remediate or that control of each of those individual endpoints. So 4 kind of key tenets here around visibility, which I've talked about at length here. The alignment, creating that common language between security, risk, and operations teams. The responsiveness, that ability to go ahead and remediate vulnerabilities and compliance with a single click. And just control that, that the perimeter of our operations theater, if you will, has greatly expanded, not only through COVID, but just through the general digital transformation that's occurring across the world right now. So that is, again, those are some of the four kind of core tenets again across the Tanium platform. I mentioned the Log4j here briefly, and let me just go a little bit more into kind of some of the ways that we at Tanium approach that problem. The red text up here indicates the actual modules within the Tanium console. So Reveal is one of our modules, and we use that to find the indicators of vulnerability. So that was our ability to go look into nested files to find out where was the Log4j library registered, essentially. We were able to go in and search every machine in seconds and understand where that might exist. Now, the next most important part of that, once we know where it exists, let's go look for signs of exploitation, right? In this particular case, there was a JNDI call that was going out to the web, and they were able to take, text from sort of a chat or a comment piece of this Java code, and then spit it out to be an actual executable, right? Incredibly dangerous. Threat response module from Tanium is able to sort of understand those patterns, understand what that might look like, and help alert you to where those kinds of things could be occurring in your environment. Deploy down here at the bottom of the chart really gets into that remediation and hardening of this. If we know that there are vulnerable applications that have been addressed by their vendors, and we need to go and push out an update to an entire app across an entire organization, that's where deploy comes in. And deploy can actually build that package for multiple platforms and make sure everybody's running on that new non-vulnerable version in seconds. And then finally, comply, right? Our compliance solution helps us report on what that exposure looks like. Now that we know kind of where and what vulnerabilities exist that are associated, we can actually paint a really full picture of what that looks like across your particular environment. So again, XEM, this converged endpoint management, competitively speaking, we've talked already about some of the other individual point solutions that are out there. And what is unique about Tanium is the fact that it is that single trusted view. It is a truly integrated end-to-end platform. We converge multiple workflows, and we also have control over millions, literally millions of endpoints. The scalability of this platform is absolutely off the charts. And then remediation delivery in seconds, right? So when you look at those 5 attributes and you kind of compare those against some of the incumbents and other vendors that are out there, that's what makes Tanium really unique, is the fact that we cover all of those different areas and those different scenarios. Just a high-level visual, really, of the entire Tanium story here. You see the tagline at the top, the power of certainty. Again, that visibility and control equals, in my opinion, certainty, right? Is that we know exactly what we're looking at, and we can measure that in real time with high-fidelity data that we have high confidence in. The overall category, converged endpoint management, as we've just discussed. 3 very specific outcomes we hope to come from the platform: visibility, control, and trust. And I think I've talked enough about visibility and control, but on the trust side, again, getting that single source of truth so that everybody knows we're looking at the same data sets and we're talking about the same numbers, that helps to build that IT operations plus security as opposed to that versus security. When we get down into the sort of the platform layer here, one of the things that we have not spoken a whole lot about is our linear chain architecture, which is our patented sort of the secret sauce of Tanium, if you will, in my estimation. And that is the way that the single Tanium server communicates with every endpoint in seconds, is that rather than trying to communicate with every one of them or going through an expensive relay agent that introduces a lot of latency into the system, we actually talk to each individual subnet. Will take the very first client in that subnet, and the server passes a message to that individual client, who then examines whatever the question is, whatever the interrogation is that the server is looking for. It writes it to a file, its answer to that file, whether that's IP address or does this vulnerability exist, or what kind of hardware, what kind of processor, whatever, writes that to a file and sends it to the next client on the next dot 1, dot 2, dot 3, all along a subnet until it gets to the end, where that entire message is compacted and sent right back up to the server. Now, that happens literally in seconds, and I'll show you guys here in a moment. We'll go over and take a look at the demo environment at how quickly that kind of comes back. But the other 2 pieces, extensible data model. If you think about it this way, we can, any piece of data that exists on any endpoint, any registry setting in the Windows world, or any process that's running, all of that, you have to consider that's part of the data model. Those are the pieces of information that the Tanium server can go get, whether that's a running process or that's the existence of an application. both of those, all of those different ad hoc kind of data points are what we're able to bring to the table. And then also send a lightweight agent, which I mentioned earlier, by removing some of those point solutions and really focusing on the single agent that can do all these multiple different tasks, that can greatly reduce the footprint overall across an environment. We are divided into 5 solution areas here. We'll talk a little bit more about these solution areas as we get into some of the demo, but primarily they are risk and compliance, client management, thinking of patching, deploying software, performance perhaps, asset discovery and inventory. I think we've talked pretty extensively about here today, which is literally just understanding exactly what is on the network, what's out there in my environment. Threat hunting, so actually just shutting down the attackers, being able to do legitimate threat hunting, looking for patterns and indicators of compromise that may indicate nefarious activity occurring in your network. And finally, sensitive data monitoring. So really getting complete control over all of your sensitive and other data. But those are the 5 areas. At the very bottom here are the different modules. And again, we'll walk through some of those modules as we get into the demo a little bit. I love this quote from one of the analysts at IDC, that Tanium is a cloud-based platform that is specifically designed to quickly address the root causes of IT and security challenges while unifying those teams through its single pane of glass. That one makes me happy because IDC, it's just showing IDC getting it, right? Understanding the principal mission and the principal value that Tanium is bringing to the table. Now, real quickly, I'm not going to drain this slide at all, but I do want to just maybe pick out, 1 or 2 of these different things, different business outcomes, right? And this is an important piece of, the way that we look at the overall Tanium platform is, yes, that's great that we can do all those technological things, but what are the outcomes that a business can expect to get from that? And one of the ones I'll talk about here is mergers and acquisitions. If you think about any kind of M&A activity, there is, generally speaking, there's going to be some budget to go perform that operation, and the ability for Tanium to go and get connected to, let's say, to a prospective target's environment, right? Somebody that company A here wants to go buy this company, they can stand up Tanium to go and take a look and understand all of the assets during that due diligence phase of the acquisition, to get real-time data, to get really consistent high-fidelity data all the way across that environment, and understand exactly what it is that they're purchasing. The other one, let's see, that I wanted to discuss, let's just talk asset management. Again, asset management is it is a huge category, right? IT asset management. When we think about feeding a CMDB, right, making sure that the most fresh current information about what is out there is getting into your CMDB, that's another area where Tanium can shine, because Tanium has that real-time capability to talk to every endpoint and then package up the data and ship it off to a ServiceNow, as an example, who can then take that data and immediately ingest it. And now you've got all of the ServiceNow capabilities, but you get the freshest possible data coming out of Tanium. So just a couple of different things to sort of think about from an overall outcome of what the Tanium platform can provide. But that, in a nutshell, is the power of certainty, folks. That's the promise of Tanium. That is what it is that we bring to the table, and I think what differentiates us from any other vendor that's out there today. All right, let's jump into a demo here real quick. Let's see. Okay, just want to make sure you guys can see that.
Yeah, we can definitely see it, Bill, and thanks for staying with us and moving us through this. First off, thank you for taking us through the presentation, because first off, I think you gave a great high-level view of Tanium, but I think the thing that I kind of came away with was, okay, really, in an hour, you're still kind of scratching the surface. But again, the whole idea of that close connectedness between IT operations and security to get to a result where you can effectively control and protect your environment, I think is really interesting, very unique. So, thank you for stepping us through that.
Yeah, absolutely, Raj. Well, yeah. So here we are. We're in the Tanium console. So here's the product, the platform that I've just been speaking about, and really excited to kind of walk through some of these different pieces today. But again, this is the home screen of the Tanium console, and you can see some useful information up front. Again, this is a demo environment. filled with mostly virtual machines here, about 914, as you can see, are online right at the moment. We get a nice clean breakdown up here of just sort of the overall operating platform environment. What does that look like? We also get an indication that we have 289 unmanaged network interfaces. We'll talk a little bit more about that. This is really the core engine of the Tanium platform is right here, this explore data, this question builder capability. Let me just start with that because I think this is what will show you and give you the sort of a first taste of what does that speed look like from the Tanium console. We can just literally type almost like a Google kind of a question. I want to get computer names from all machines. Pretty simple question, but let me tell you about what's happening here in the background while this is rolling, and keep an eye on this 8% here as that number grows. This is not coming back from a database, folks. What we're actually doing is we are packaging up that question. I want your computer name from all machines. So there's essentially no filter on this question other than return to me, what is your computer name? And we're going to send that package, as I said, down to the subnet, to the very first .1 client that's on that subnet, who's going to assess that question, say, yep, I'm in the all machines bucket, and I'm going to return my computer name, writes it to a file, sends it over to .2, looks at it, yep, I'm in the all machines bucket, and here's my computer name. And just like that, we're going to get this list of all of the all the 914 or 910 computers that are in this environment at the moment. Now, that's interesting, right? But maybe I need a little bit more information here. Maybe I also want to get an IP address from all machines as well to append that to this table. So now you'll notice I'm going to get the computer name and then their IP address, both in IPv4 and IPv6, right? And again, 100% just like that, right? Super fast, super lightweight way for us to kind of ask questions of an entire organization. So that's where I want to start with this, is just to show you that's the basic premise of what it is that Tanium can do. It is interrogating every endpoint in your environment with a question and getting back an answer quickly, and then providing that data set. Now, when we take that to sort of its logical end, we can collect those same answers to those questions on a regular basis, which may not be interesting in the case of computer name and or IP address, but it could be very, very interesting as we start to think about some of the more dynamic attributes and elements of a PC, or any kind of an endpoint here. But let's go into, and where we are right now, this is trends. This is just another one of the modules in the workbench here. And trends is the way to show sort of business intelligence, graphs, charts around what's happening in the environment. And so if I go down to, let's go down to patch as an example. And I'm going to get all kinds of patch information here. I'm going to get the coverage of the patch workbench, what percent needs attention, as you can see quite a few here, and what percent are optimal. So how many of the endpoints in my environment are actually running the Tanium agent right now and also running this patch capability. We can get down and look over time, the mean time to patch for either workstations or servers based on an integration with ServiceNow. We can look at missing critical important patches by year. We can get into severity. So a lot of great sort of visualizations of what is the state of your environment right now and right here. Now, let me, I do want to kind of go through this in some sort of an order here. And again, this is just another view of, sort of a high level of what the Tanium platform looks like. But what I want to call everybody's attention to, what I want to walk through a little bit, and I'll just pick a couple of these, but is the solution areas themselves and kind of an example of how some of those pieces work. We're going to go and start with risk and compliance. And so what I'm going to do is go into our risk module here. And first, what I want to call your attention to here is this risk score over time. So on a daily basis, we're capturing an overall assessment of the risk inherent in this particular environment. Now, what is that based of? It's based on these 6 risk vectors here. Everything from insecure TLS, SSL, expired certificates, both of those fairly self-explanatory. Password identification, how many places are we seeing password.txt files, right? Or passwords in clear text. Administrative access, we can also do analysis of Active Directory users and groups, and where do those things kind of override each other? What kinds of risk is there for lateral movement based on the groups and associated users in those groups? We can also look at system compliance, and in this case, system vulnerability here. Further down in the dashboard here, we get all kinds of good risk information, highest risk by operating system, by specific CVE. When we get into some of the compensating controls, we can show exactly what is the TPM status across all these different machines, et cetera. But again, I want to jump back into system vulnerability, as it is clearly the highest of these vectors here. And so I want to drill in a little bit into what's going on there. And if I pull up this, the system vulnerability page, I'm going to see the vulnerability over time, again, sort of taken on a regular interval basis, so we can see where are we trending? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? And let's not talk about these two big humps here in the lab. That's probably a whole nother story here. But it also will show me every single individual endpoint that is, that has a high risk score, right? So we're going to start from the highest vector score here, all the way down through every endpoint, and we get a sort of a quick view of, okay, what are the top machines that are causing problems here, right? From a CVE's perspective, I'm going to get a list of all the CVEs that exist. In other words, all the vulnerabilities that exist across this environment, right? And I'm going to go pick on one specific one, Print Nightmare, which was, I believe, was a early 2021 vulnerability. And as you can see, I've narrowed down that list from all the vulnerabilities that exist to that specific Print Nightmare piece. And when I put a check in this box here, you'll notice these two buttons light up here, either explore it and comply, or I can go and directly pivot into remediating it in patch and taking care of that CVE and getting rid of that vulnerability. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on explore in comply. And that's going to give me some really interesting information here. I can see, again, where it exists on which endpoints. The other piece I can get is I can look at it by operating system. So I can see how many, which variants of Windows in this case are exposed to this particular vulnerability. And then I can click in on any of these, and I'm going to go and look onto the server side of things, 2016 server here. I can get more details on this particular CVE here. I don't know why that's not popping up. A little demo fail here. I'm wondering if it's, my apologies, everybody. Here it is. It just took a moment. So we can get the details of the CVE, right? This is a print spooler remote code execution vulnerability. We get all, the actual score of it. We get help links to go to SecPod, MITRE, and NIST to take a look at their view of this particular vulnerability. We can look at the particular impact, available patches. But notice also that we have a link here for patch. And when I click on this link, I'm going to pivot away from the risk module that we were just looking at, the comply module that we were just in. We're going to pivot over to patch. And so now I've got that particular patch queued up, ready to go. You'll see the install button here. We'll get to that in one moment. But this shows me where is it applicable, where is this patch going to go out to essentially, and then patches that are included in that particular patch list. So when I click install, I'm going to get some of the deployment details here. I'm going to get the ability to do individual targeting if I really just wanted maybe a very small subset of computers. I can make sure that it is going to honor any existing maintenance windows that occur within an organization. I can set this up for an ongoing deployment so that it's constantly looking for the existence of this and automatically going ahead and running that patch. Or I can just do it as a single deployment. So really powerful capabilities there all the way through that workbench. Now, the other thing that we know about the Print Nightmare vulnerability particularly is that there's also there is a print spooler service issue to this. There's a policy that needs to be enforced. And so I'm going to jump into Tanium Enforce at this point, and we're going to really quickly walk through the steps of creating a policy to go ahead and remediate the problem so that that doesn't occur anymore across this organization. And so what we're going to do is we'll go in and just start typing on the name of a new policy here. And we're going to, under the policy type, we're going to come down to machine administrative templates. And under here is going to be printers. And these are just samples of the different policies that you can enforce across your entire organization with a click of a button here. But now under printers, the other thing that we needed to take care of is around the print spooler. And that is sort of denying the ability for remote clients to connect to the print spooler service. So there is a very specific policy here for allow print spooler to accept client connections. I can mark that as disabled, and I can go ahead and add that to the policy. ship that out to every machine that's out there, and now their policy will include not allowing those connections to the print spooler service. One more step that has to be done in order to do that, we have to restart the print spooler service. So for that, I'm going to go back to sort of the home page here, and I'm going to get running service from all machines. Now, again, we're going to go and we're going to live in real time interrogate every endpoint out there and ask for every running service on that particular endpoint. And what we're going to start to see here, obviously you can see the individual services that are running across every endpoint in the demo environment here, but I really just want to focus on the print spooler piece, right? So I'm going to go ahead and use the text filter here to go ahead and locate that print spooler service. I'll put a check in the box there, and I'm going to say deploy action. And now, very simply, I'm just going to type restart. We locate a package that says restart service. One button, boom, that's going to go out to anybody that just got that service and is running the print spooler service. They're all going to go ahead and restart that service in real time, just like that. So let me pause and take a breath and see if there are any questions around that risk, sort of solution area, risk and compliance solution area.
Well, first off, Bill, let me jump in here and say I was just picking up a couple of chats from some of the attendees, and they were really liking this one aspect that you just demonstrated. And of course, there's another part of me that says, okay, I think Bill's scratching the surface here, but really what an interesting way to be able to identify vulnerabilities and then take action in the same platform.
I think that is the secret sauce, right? I mentioned that linear chain technology is the secret sauce. I'm going to revise that. I think that's the secret sauce, right? Is that it really is all about that ability to pivot from one to the next, right? To pivot from discovering a problem to remediating a problem, just like that, right? And that's a super powerful thing that very few platforms offer today. A lot of solutions out there can identify vulnerabilities, can identify patches, can perhaps identify policies that aren't applied. But the ability to have all of those in a single workbench and the ability to kind of almost effortlessly move between those modules to take care of those different parts of the problem, and with authority, right? You know that once you've submitted that patch job, that's going to run, that's going to work, that's not going to fail on some 17, 20%, and you're going to have to go through a triage process. You know that's going to work. And how do you know that's going to work? Because you go ask the question, did that patch go through? And you will see every time, yep, the patch went through, patch is complete. Patch is now present on the system. So I agree, Raj. I think that's a really cool aspect of what our platform offers. No question.
Excuse me. And you know what, Bill, thanks for summarizing it like that. And it's, once again, it's just, efficient IT operations, making IT operations more efficient gives you that opportunity to kind of, just avoid problems. I mean, it's simple in principle, it's simple in idea, a lot harder to actually do. So it's really interesting that Tanium's kind of gone through the process of putting together a platform that brings this together. So all we can say, Bill, is we want to see more. What more do you got?
let me walk through a little bit of sort of our client management portion of the platform. And this really runs the gamut from sort of the third-party deployment module to the first-party operating system patching, through to this concept of performance. And that's really the ability to use that same architecture that we use to connect and talk with every endpoint in near real time to also look at performance issues and concerns, right? Now, let's see. What I want to do is let's just kind of, again, go through a hypothetical scenario here, and that we've got an end client, if you will, or an endpoint that is that's been running into some challenges with a CPU type issue. What I want to do is I'm going to connect to a specific machine here, and so again, let's assume that I've gotten a ticket from this particular user. They're having some challenges. They're having some issues. Things aren't performing right. They don't have nearly the horsepower that they need to go run their pivot tables or do whatever it is that they're doing, right? So now we've connected directly to this individual endpoint here. And I can get some good snapshot information here. Yep, I can see the utilization on the CPU is at 100%, memory at 58. I can look at the network throughput, disk activity. Those all look generally okay, but CPU is certainly a big concern, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to come down here and note that we can look at all kinds of different CPU metrics here, whether that's CPU usage percentage or user or kernel interrupt percentages. But we can definitely see as we're looking at this that there is some pretty heavy activity going on this particular machine. Now, what I do know is that one of the problems in this scenario, if you will, is that in some endpoints, we had multiple versions of antivirus software running. You can see that right here, this yellow is antivirus, or I'm sorry, I guess it is dynamically changing there. We've got antivirus.exe as one of these processes that we're highlighted on, and the other one is called security software. Now, we know that security software is our new solution, right? And that we want to make sure that we're not running both security software.exe as well as antivirus.exe. We can see where this is getting tripped up all over each other and completely spiking the CPU. One AV vendor is essentially scanning the other, right? It's going back and forth. Clearly, that's going to lead to the problem around this contention for CPU resources. So what we're going to do is we're going to go pivot over to our deploy module here. And I know from looking at that, yeah, they've definitely got both versions of that running. So what I want to do is, and again, deploy is really our third-party deployment tool. So if you want to go deploy a brand new, net new piece of software to all your endpoints, you can create a package with all kinds of, all the instructions and command switches that you might want, and then create a package for that can go to every machine and go ahead and deploy whatever that new software is. In our case, I want to use it for something a little different. I want to use it for the removal of a piece of software. And so I'm going to go into our predefined package or software packages here. And let's see, here is remove antivirus.exe. I'll go ahead and check that. And then I can go ahead and deploy that package. It's going to go out and it's going to remove that antivirus. And we're going to make that user much, much happier who is experiencing roughly 100% CPU utilization at all times. So that is one of the things I wanted to click through here for you. Let's see. Let me pause. Yeah.
Bill, sorry, a couple of questions with that. Now, when you look at that inventory list on that given computer, how fresh is that? Is that did the tool go out and ping the system and say, okay, like as of now, that's what's on the system, or is it is that based on historic?
Yeah, it is. It is going to be based on a live response get installed applications, right, from all machines. So we can do this, and again, note the speed here. Watch the progress indicator. And again, this is now talking to all of those different machines out there. But yes, Raj, we can get that in real time like that, and then from that, we're going to help make the decision in terms of what needs to be deployed or removed, or if that package is applicable to that individual endpoint.
That's fascinating. So the end user didn't have to go in and do an add remove. You did it.
That's correct. You did it all really here from the console as a package. And we can make that a recurring package. One of the things that you sometimes see is, let's say, Zoom or Chrome or somewhere where a user can intervene and perhaps install or not install an update. We can make that a regularly recurring job so we're constantly looking for out-of-date versions of Zoom, Chrome, take your pick, right? Whatever piece of software, and make sure that if that is out of date, we're going to go and run that package to make sure that everybody's at a consistent version and running the right version of the software effectively.
That's terrific. I guess that's part of the reason we use Tanium as part of our managed service.
Right. One other new feature that we've just added here is this data exploration concept, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I do want to show that we've got some awesome visuals and ways to go out and sort of capture real-time numeric data in this case, but also graphical data that can then be shared and presented to your CEO, your board, whoever. About in this case, this is a devices summary, right? But there are multiple dashboards here that we could pick from. We could get into CVEs and kind of where do we stand. Notice we get a little indicator of the trending. This is in this case, it's since yesterday. That can be configured to multiple different ways of sort of looking at that. But yeah, I just wanted to show that, just sort of a quick teaser on that point. The other piece I did want to show is just around Tanium threat response. And well, let me do this. I want to do a live connection. I'm sorry, not that one. Let's see if we can connect to this guy. some really powerful capability here in terms of inspecting individual process paths, right? So again, this is happening in real time, that we can get this process information directly back. But we can go and, this is a monster one. Obviously, I've probably picked kind of a super huge thread here, but you can see as I'm scrolling over here to the right, we can get all of the hierarchy, the parent-child hierarchy of different processes that were spawned. Obviously, incredibly useful during an incident sort of investigation is to understand where was a privileged PowerShell commandlet launched, right? And then what were the things that respond underneath that? So incredibly powerful from a threat hunting perspective. We can also connect to a machine and gather a preset bundle that is configurable of registry, of memory dumps. Take your pick, everything that you could get from an endpoint machine. We can configure that so that if we do encounter a problem, we can hit this capture button and get just a tranche of data around that individual endpoint and exactly what was going on, so that we can then perhaps quarantine that machine and not have to worry about losing access to what does that snapshot look like from a registry, from a memory, from a disk, from a process perspective. So Raj, to your point, I apologize. I am just kind of dipping into some of these things, but hopefully this gives you all a good overview, really, of what is the Tanium platform all about.
Well, Bill, first off, no need to apologize, because I think that there's certainly a lot there. There's a lot that you've kind of gone through. And, I'm certainly grateful that you've kind of taken us through the high level, because, of course, when you read this, and I had the opportunity to do my reading before I joined, or we had this webinar, I was thinking, yeah, this really looks good. The whole common sense aspect of bringing security together with IT operations in a single platform makes a ton of sense. But really, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It really points out that if you've got solid IT operations and you can connect it to focused actions, you can get a positive result. Now, as you also kind of pointed out, is like you've talked about converged endpoint management. We know that there's, you've got five areas that you drill down on or that are part of the suite. And I think each one of them is probably a demo and presentation worthy of an hour itself. But thank you for taking us through this, Bill. I've really enjoyed it. I guess when I was watching this, I was thinking, yeah, we got to do this again, because this is a great thing to talk about.
So many areas to drill into, absolutely. And
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, of course, the other thing is I think we could also very much do a follow on, by digging into threat hunting, by digging into the CMDB, and then just kind of understanding those better, because it's one thing, of course, to put it into one platform. The other thing is to do each and every one of those functions well. And I think certainly from what I've seen, you guys do it well. So it's worthwhile to do the investigation. So Bill, once again, many thanks. I'd also like to thank everyone who decided to join. Thank you so much for jumping on this webinar. This is part of our Tech Thursdays that we run, and we've got another event that's coming up on the 21st. I'll go into that in just a bit. But before I go any further, I want to point out that Tanium obviously has a strong presence in the US. They've also got a presence in Canada, and they've got a global presence. We're very pleased to be one of their MSP partners. So we do offer Tanium as a service, and that's important to keep in mind, because if you say, look, I really just want the output, I really want to make sure my environment's well monitored, well, XenTegra can help you with that. So if you did get an invitation from XenTegra, please contact your rep, or if you need any assistance reaching your rep, just let us know. But as we wrap things up, actually, let me just see here. We still got about like 6 minutes. So let me see. Deb has been very helpful in terms of asking us questions. Deb, thanks so much for your questions and your comments. We appreciate them so much. If anyone else has got, a question, we've got Bill here. And so it's a great opportunity to get a question out. Again, I also see that we've got Kurt Esser on and Moin Khan. Moin actually is in another time zone, a time zone with where it's night. So I don't know if Moin's going to have an ability to jump on, but for those who are on, thank you for joining. I want to remind you that on the 21st, we're holding another Tech Talk, and the focus is Chrome and Citrix delivered over GCP. However, I want to point out that we are just going to have to find another way to get Tanium back here because this was just great. We really appreciated your time, Bill. I want to thank you. I want to thank your sales team. And we're just so excited to be your partner, and we look forward to doing more with you this year and also into the year ahead. So with that, I don't have anything further except I'd like to thank everyone, and we look forward to seeing you on the 21st for our next Text Talk. And with that, we're going to end it off.
Thanks a lot, Raj. Thanks, everybody.